This is the StartupsDilse podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Do us a favor, subscribe on YouTube or LinkedIn, and be sure to give us your feedback. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello everyone, this is Anthony Prakash. Welcome to another new episode of StartupsDilse. Thanks for joining us on this brand new episode. I'm privileged today to have Venkata Chunduru from the Arcadis IBI group. Venkat and I have known each other for the last 12 to almost 14 months, I would say. I met him last year in Bangalore, and he and I have talked about several things, which we'll talk about on this podcast. And he keeps doing a lot of fun stuff in the world of mobility, transportation, and alongside that, a lot of innovation in that space. So Venkat, first of all, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us at 6 a.m. India time from Bangalore.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. And then I'm really privileged and also very excited to be part of your podcast, and then hope to co-journey along with you and relish some of the moments that we had together in Bangalore, and then probably discuss some of the interesting aspects that you would like to hear from me.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Venkat. So, first of all, in coming from the technology background myself, I don't run into a lot of people who are involved in, say, what we do on a daily basis, drive on the street, figure out, look at transportation signals, traffic lights, and things like that. And when I saw your session the first time, I was blown away by the amount of technology that actually goes into that, the amount of work that goes into that. Then we also heard from the Assistant Commissioner of Police in Bangalore as to how much technology they utilize, and in a lot of ways in tandem working with you guys. So Venkat, maybe we start with your college career, right? I see that you did civil engineering in your bachelor's program, but you shifted from civil engineering and did transportation systems as your master's. Out of everything that is out there, what made you pick transportation engineer?
When we studied civil engineering in our graduation, I think transportation was also a part of
Okay.
it. So, what excited me was when I actually went to IIT Bombay after my MTech GATE qualification for an interview, and then I happened to meet Professor P.K. Sikdar, and who happened to be my guide and my mentor and a philosopher subsequently. And the work that he is doing and the projects that they're doing had impressed me a lot and excited me a lot as a student at that stage. And then I have been offered a special MTech under research program. So and then that's one of the best things that actually happened, I believe, at that time. And he actually took me through the exciting things that they are doing in terms of in city of Mumbai, how they are actually trying to work on large infra projects, how they are doing modeling, and that usually excites any student at that times. And in fact, I went to IIT Bombay to get a MTech into structural engineering, which was a fascination at that point in time. But when I heard, and then I'm completely swayed away by my professor, and then that's how it all happened. And I never looked back. I think that decision was decisions I feel I took at any point in time in my life. Yeah.
That is perfect. And I still remember the days, I actually come from a mechanical engineering background myself, but I've done nothing related to mechanical engineering in my career. The only computer science lab we used to have was AutoCAD, right? And of course, we used to have all those drawing exams with the big scale and things like that. And we did have structural engineering as well. You're bringing back fond memories of my college career as well. But at the same time, when you look back at your career from where you started to where you are right now, technology has made massive strides from what you potentially thought could be solved, and then of course the problems becoming much bigger and bigger. can you kind of give us a rundown, Venkat, on what you did after that to what you're doing right now in Arcadis?
Right, right, right. So when I started with my MTech program in IIT Bombay, one of the parallel things that I was expected to do was also to contribute to the research and the projects that the professor is undertaking as part of the institutional work. So I happen to work on some of those projects such as Worli Bandra Sealink feasibility studies and Western Freeway projects. There were conventional traffic and modeling studies forecasting the travel demand and which become the inputs for establishing the feasibility of large transport infrastructure projects. And that has laid the whole foundation for me in terms of the conventional travel demand modeling and traffic studies. But one of the important things that actually sowed the seed at that point in time was the technology side of the story, where we had one of the best computer labs in the institute after computer science engineering. And all my friends used to envy us looking at that lab. And then we had all the privileges of actually software, hardware to play around with. And that has also built in a curiosity angle in terms of how we can actually leverage the tech from that point of view. So then subsequently after my MTech at IIT Bombay, then I moved on to Tata Consultancy Services,
Hmm.
where again I was actually part of the management consulting team and not the coding team, because that I was very clear. One of the career transition points also what my professor advised me was that not to get into software but to actually stick to the core and stay through. And even when I was actually joining TCS, I was actually part of the management consulting team, which was involved with the transportation projects at that point in time. But however, those projects were also part of the conventional traffic studies and also part of some of those uh, technology studies as well. Yeah. So while I was actually doing my masters, one of the things that also happened was I need to work on parallelly on a lot of these projects, uh, conventional, while they are actually mostly conventional traffic modeling and traffic forecasting kind of projects. I also actually had the opportunity to work in tech at that point itself, because we actually had one of the best computer labs in the institute, IIT Bombay, apart from after computer science lab, and then even my friends used to envy it a lot. So that's where I got a little exposure to technology, which also always kept me looped in with technology. And while I was actually doing my masters, I also happened to work in some of the flagship projects like Worli Bandra Sealink and Western Freeway feasibility studies. Uh, Post my masters, one of the important things, also decision points that happened was when almost all my colleagues were actually getting into software. That was the boom at that point in time. So my professor actually hold my hand and said, like, you are not going to be joining software. I think you need to stay through. And then and he promised me and assured me that he will never repent on these decisions. And so that's one of the good things that actually happened. And that one of the other things I also saw in my career, in my life, was also the kind of good mentors who had been always guiding me at right point in time and helping me take those right decisions
Okay.
and sway through some of the challenging times in my life. And once that, I actually joined TCS, though it is known for its tech, but in those days they also used to have one specific team called management consulting team. They used to work on consulting and advisory studies. So and we were focusing more on transportation. And then for almost like 3.5 years, I was actually with TCS, where I worked on both conventional travel demand modeling and other studies. And one of the Mumbai Metro project that we are seeing today was, we were the ones who actually did the entire Mumbai Metro master plan.
Very
We did
nice.
the total travel demand modeling for the city, and then we created that master plan. And I'm glad to see those projects are all now coming to reality. So, and then at TCS, I was also part of some of those tech projects. In those days, it used to be called the Information Technology Studies, ISTP studies, they used to call. And we used to be part of those which are associated with digital. With those days, it is actually called technology transformation, and then today we call it as a digital
Digital
transformation.
trans.
To work with PWDs, government bodies, and World Bank projects. So where we used to actually advise them on how the technology transition which all can be automated, what are all the processes that can be automated. So we used to work on both business process reengineering and then the automation side of the story also. And one of the last projects that I actually worked with them was also on the Mundra port automation project. So where I was part of the team which was core domains. As a domain specialist, we used to be part of the project where we created that technology transformation plan. And subsequently, at that time, CMS was actually acquired by TCS. And then TCS, and that was the first joint project of CMC and TCS together. So that's how we had our hands and legs into technology associated with transportation. So what seeds that the IIT Bombay has laid in terms of not just the conventional transportation projects, but they also gave us the training on system side of the story as well. So that always kept us in the chase of using technology to actually see how we can make the systems better from the way as to how they can actually show the outcomes,
Got it.
right?
Got it.
And then I actually, from there, I moved on to WilburSmith, again, and I'm a US based MNC, where I was actually involved in traffic and transportation studies. We did a lot of those metro. I was actually involved in some of those Middle East projects that they were actually doing for creating the transport plans. And then the big change came in when I actually moved to Bangalore on behalf of for joining WilburSmith. But as part of our one of our studies, I actually got into bumped into GMR, where we were making a presentation to them on one of their investment prospective investments bids on highway project. And then they liked us so much, and then especially with me, they actually developed a good rapport. And then they said, like, why don't you join us? We actually want you to be part of the team that we are actually building. And that actually made a big change into career transition that actually happened. And of course, GMR, I never look back again for 10 years, how the time passed, and then how we got engaged with the technology and the operations and traffic studies and all that. And GMR gave me a good platform to explore my passion in terms of whatever the seeds that were sown while I studied a lot of ITS, intelligent transport systems in IIT, and then subsequently the kind of base work that we did in TCS. So all that we were actually able to curate those for infra projects in GMR. And I grew a lot, both professionally and as well as career wise. I had seen a very steep growth in GMR, and also was able to build a lot of relationships. We made a lot of friends, we made a lot of partnerships. and into diverse areas. I think it's not just only about infra. When we actually, I remember we were also exploring auxiliary revenue models for highways, and then we actually had collaboration with HMS Host, which actually runs the chain of hotels and restaurants and travel accessories
Yeah.
across transport by airports or roads. And those were wonderful times, and we all were also looking with collaborations with international global companies, and then we get an opportunity to travel. That was one of the best things that GMR gave us as a platform to go explore, learn, and then come back
Bring
and
it
try to
back.
see how we contribute back into the organization and the projects. So I think that was with GMR, and then subsequently, GMR was actually moving on its operations from lock, stock, barrel from Bangalore to Delhi, and
Mm.
that's when again the question mark came in, because I wasn't in a mode to move away from Bangalore. Uh, so with my son just got into schooling, uh, and we never wanted to move to Delhi. So I tried exploring running between the cities, but it was a bit challenging. So that's when I said like I want to move on. So though it was a very one of the very very
Toughest.
difficult and challenging decisions that I had to take. Again, I I went back to my mentors, and then uh, took their advice, and then accordingly I moved on. And then that's when actually I didn't have even a 1 day break. I actually immediately joined a startup in Bangalore called Introvate, and that's again focused on technology solutions for especially the transportation related problems. And there, while I worked on my already an existing known domain of toll management systems and traffic management systems, one of the interesting things that we also designed a solution was to actually for the container tracking project with NEC, who were actually tied up with the national. Now we call it as a National Industrial Corridor Development Corporation.
Mm.
So for how to improve the ease of doing business, right? So and this container tracking, container lockup was actually causing a big bottleneck for improving the efficiencies in the system. So that problem statement as actually was put thrown at us as to how we can actually design a system which can track. And that's when we designed an RFID based container tracking system. And now I'm very happy the pilot that we actually carried out, set up, and made it a success is now going places with all the ports connected, and the logistic data bank is being built up, and it's going very well. So I think that's post that with Introvate. Then I also subsequently got into IBI. So again, there is a story behind why I had to come to IBI. So me and Deepak were studying together in IIT Bombay. Deepak was part of bachelor's program, and then I was actually studying my MTech and taking care of computer lab. So we bumped into each other more often with his guide being common, and trying to work on computer lab. He came back to India during 2006, and he was trying to set up the shop for IBA in India. And then that's when we again bumped each other at my professor's place. So and then he said like, "What are you doing?" And then GMR was also looking for toll traffic management solutions for their highways. And then I said, why don't we work together? So I think that's how we started. And fortunately, they came on board through a bidding process, and that's how the collaboration with IBA started. And that was one of the successful projects that actually happened in the industry. So one of the flagship projects, I should say, in terms of toll and traffic management systems along GMR highways. And when Deepak came to know that I moved on from GMR and then didn't even tell them, so they were also a little taken aback and said like, we wanted you to be on our side rather than going around with other things. But then I said I have
Nice.
already committed here. So that's when the introvert, when also after these projects, there was some sort of a shake-up happening because being a startup is a startup, shake-ups keep happening. So there was change of ownership that was actually happening, and then I said like, okay, no, I think this is not something that I have an appetite for. So then I moved on to IBI. So and
Nice.
it's eight year completed, ninth year running for me again in IBI. And 2 years back, Arcadis took over, and then this is where we are with all the
Beautiful.
projects that we are into, and that's where we are today. I think this is the timeline that I can.
Incredible, Venkat. I mean, first of all, I mean, I would say you're lucky. I mean, partly you've created your luck because you are pursuing your passion right from, the school days, if you will, right from IIT to
Yeah,
right now. You could have fallen prey, like you said yourself, to the software boom or, Y2K, which was there. And, it didn't matter in India, right? What mechanical or what engineer didn't matter. You always became a software engineer,
yes, yes,
right?
yes.
So good to see that you didn't fall prey to that. So kudos to you on that. And then, I mean, a lot of impact that you've created along the way, which we can probably talk about. So the part I want to ask you next, Venkat, is, I mean, obviously this is a space where 20 years ago you don't see the type of I mean, much like any other industry perhaps, but I mean, at what scale do you think things have changed or innovation has come through in your world compared to, say, the rest of the world, right? I mean, when you look at software or a software engineer, if you will, I mean, every other month or something, there's a new platform coming. I mean,
Correct.
of late it is AI and things like that. But if you just look at it through your lens, you said you were working on some of the projects in Mumbai, even when you started out of college to right now. I mean, how do you see innovation or the disruption happening in your world? And then maybe we can pivot to see how the technology overlap is happening as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, I think the transportation, India always had that infrastructure deficit,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that was pulling our economy from uh,
Booming.
scaling up, booming, right? But in the late 90s, when the infrastructure boom started, and the focus on the infrastructure development and investment started coming in, I think the more focus in this particular sector was more on building the basic blocks of actually concrete, or I should say brick and mortar activity, because there was
Yeah.
huge deficit. So the focus was more on building that, because only when you actually have an infrastructure, that's when a quality infrastructure, that's when you can actually talk of other things.
It's
So
more like the
having said,
backbone of the country
yeah,
itself.
backbone was required. So
Yeah.
that was actually being done. A lot of innovation was actually happening. I don't say technology, but innovation was happening on material use, what type of material that we should actually be using, and what type of techniques should be used in making it more faster and making it more, improving the quality of the infrastructure, and those kind of things. So the innovation was more focused on fast tracking the work and making sure the quality is better, or in terms of how we actually operate that infrastructure and maintain that infrastructure, focus subsequently, right?
Hmm.
So the focus was more on those things. But late 2000s, I think that's when the importance of technology then actually started with the infra, because always we actually had that limitation of the space. So we couldn't have actually grown the infrastructure at a pace at which the vehicle ownerships were actually growing, or the transportation volumes were actually growing. So whether it's people or the goods that we are actually talking about. So that's when the emphasis actually came on how do we manage the infrastructure in a much more efficient way, to make sure that it would cater to the growing needs of the society, or the economy as a whole. So that's when slowly the technology started penetrating into it. But I can always say that that has been a slow adoption in this particular industry, like whether we actually call it as a toll, or traffic management or whether signaling systems. Even today, you can actually see a city like Bangalore today, actually out of its 500 plus junctions, we are only talking of an adaptive solution, traffic management solution. In just about a year back, we started deploying, right?
Yeah.
So the adoption of technology has actually been very, very slow, and primarily driven by the funding constraints that and the I should actually say the education or understanding of the bureaucracy side of the story.
Yeah.
So there, like for example, Mr. Anuchet, and he understands technology and its importance, and then he's driving it, saying that yes, we need to drive you capitalize the potential of technology while we continue to do what we are doing, right?
Yeah.
So that particular aspect was also missing, and with the new age bureaucrats coming in, that passion for using technology is also growing. And then once, the best part about India is that once it only takes a time for it to adopt it. Once they adopt it, the the scale of the speed of adoption
It's
is
like a
actually.
hockey stick. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like a complete hockey stick. So that's how we have actually seen, even whether we talk about FastTag, RFID based FastTag tolling. And I remember in GMR, we were the first to actually use RFID to solve one of our burning problems of buses not being paying. So we need to track how many buses were going through which were not paying. So
Yeah.
we said like we will use RFID as a technology for tracking, and then that becomes a basis for tolling we never imagined. And then that adoption of RFID was a game changer with Nandan Nilekani's committee recommendations, and then adoption of that, and then with the push that the government gave in the recent past, we it actually transitioned from a 15% penetration to a 98% penetration.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful, and it's amazing. And technology adoption in India has been at a very fast pace. So
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
it has actually happened in the transportation. The ITS, we actually call it the intelligent transport systems for the technology side of the whole story of transportation. The growth of ITS has actually been uh, in the last one decade, I should say, has actually grown substantially. And with the growth of the industry, especially the hardware side, whether it call it as a cameras or as scanners or radars or RFID readers, so all those adoption has actually started growing up, and every department is actually thinking of how they can actually capitalize or how they can actually adopt technology to improve their operational efficiencies.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for that, Venkat. I mean, one of the points you mentioned was going to be my next pivot. So you mentioned bureaucracy. Obviously, that comes in because I mean, in your world, I mean, you cannot avoid the fact that you have to work with the public sector, the government, and it's a massive collaboration for everything to come to light, right? So, how would you say that has kind of evolved over the years? I mean, obviously, to your point, in the late 1990s and in the last 10 years, I mean, the infrastructure boom, you can visibly see it, right? Whether it's the airports or, as they call it, the whole golden quadrilateral in terms of all the highways and the more highways coming up, or the different city metros that are coming up and things like that. So there needs to be a really good balance between collaborating with the government officials, right, and your private sector to make all these projects to come to life. I mean, so any thoughts on how that has kind of gotten better over the years, making your life simple? Any thought viewpoints from your side, Venkat?
Yeah, yeah. So again, I should say I've been a bit lucky to having worked with some of the best bureaucrats in the country. While my I started my career with Jalgaon traffic comprehensive traffic transportation study, and then the bureaucrats whom I worked with at that point in time were so visionary, and at that point in time they were talking of how always aligning, not focusing more on technology alone, but then focusing on how to solve the problem at large. How to actually make transportation and accessible to people, and how to leverage transportation to make it the economic engine work, right? So that was the vision, that's the kind of vision that they actually had in those days, right? And then slowly, when I actually worked with say the RFID, the kind of projects that I talked about, in whether in TCS or whether in Infrovate or in GMR. So the best part was, while their understanding on technology or deep depth was actually not much, but then they all felt the need for the technology to be there, to actually be leveraged to uh, fast track, or to make sure the problem solving happens in a better way, right? And a most innovative way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, while I say this, I also have encountered a couple of bureaucrats whose lack of understanding or knowledge of technology, they were actually trying to shy away and then keep the technology away from their. They push back whenever you go and try to discuss some technology intervention which can actually make things better. They say, no, 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 please don't disturb the way it is working, and then you continue to do what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? So I had, while you have both sides, but I can always say that the ones who are actually more forthcoming and adopting technology is almost like on a majority today. So, and that's why, where you can actually see this kind of a boom, and India becoming a digital force as well in the globe. So I think that's where the whole story is.
Yeah. So I mean, again, based on what you're saying, I feel like it's in a much better place than what it was, maybe a decade
Absolutely
ago or a couple of
right.
decades ago, and that's a testament to the progress that's been made as well, right? So being in Bangalore, Venkat, I mean, you obviously, I mean, Bangalore calls itself the Silicon Valley of India or the Silicon Valley of the East. I mean, with the number of startups, the number of people moving there, all the VC funds there, and things like that. I've seen in the press as well. I mean, in your current role in Arcadis IBI, you do partner with startups, right? I mean, you can obviously innovate internally in your role, but at the same time, I mean, in a startup world, I mean, those ideas move fast, and there is a plenty of opportunity for you to collaborate with some of those best
Right.
of breed solutions as well, right? So how do you go about picking and choosing what you build internally within your team, and these are the opportunities for you to collaborate with a startup or
Yeah.
collaborate with another partner? How do you make those decisions, Venkat?
Yeah. See, one of the fundamental principles that we always believed in, and was always to actually make sure that we are collaborating both with our customers and also with our partners and OEMs and startups. So we very well know that not everything can be done by ourselves. Even if we would want to develop that particular competency, also we always have the decision making is in terms of how efficient it is for us to, and whether to do it internally or whether we actually uh, collaborate with someone else, right?
Hmm.
So our main strength is our domain expertise and our ability to actually curate solution, right? So that's our strength as the team, whether it's Arcades or whether in TCS or wherever we were actually working. Our that's the core strength that we used to look at, and especially now when we are working as Arcades, when we are trying to build this solution of Astram, or whether the traffic management solution, adaptive signaling system, or whether we are working in other mining, Orissa Mining Corporation project that we delivered, or traffic management on highways that we are actually working on. Everywhere, I think our strength is curating a solution to solve the problem,
Yeah.
right? And what ingredients make that solution work, we want to actually collaborate with the external world, and
Perfect.
that's where we actually have looked at as the best thing that could actually happen is, if the best comes in,
Yeah.
right? And then when you stitch this thing together, and if you are able to focus more on problem solving, on our own core strength, because we believe that when it's not my strength, I don't need to start building that
Yeah.
today, and I can leverage on someone else's strength, and who's that's the core of someone else, right? So keep stick to your core, and then bring the core of others to build the solution and then make it happen. I think that's been the
Perfect.
most
Well said.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said. And that's a great approach. I mean, and it'll stand the test of time as well, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's awesome. So everybody, these days uses some bit of AI, or at least trying to use some bit of AI. How has AI impacted your world in the world of, say, transportation systems, or everything else, the plethora of things that Arcadis IBI does today?
No doubt. I think AI has a great potential. I think it's one of the biggest disruptions that could actually we as our generation could have actually seen. And I see transportation getting benefited with AI a lot. But the point here is, I think what I'm seeing and is about the more of an abuse of the word AI than an a better use. So I actually feel like I think it's important that we have a use cases built and developed, and a lot of startups are actually coming in this space as well. And we should actually be able to leverage those startups and collaborations with academia. I think that's one of the important things that we need to look at when we are actually focusing on these AI and deep tech collaborations. So coming to your point of impact of AI, I see AI playing a major role in every transportation segment, and not only in the transportation segment, but also in every stage of the life cycle of the transportation project, right?
Got it.
Whether it's actually playing a big role in design, it's playing a big role in development, or in terms of construction stage, going to play a big role in operations and maintenance as well, right?
Yeah.
So at all the phases, I actually see AI having a big role to play. And apart from that, even the digital twin, I would like to bring that also into play. That also is going to be one of the big things that's going to disrupt the industry,
Yeah.
especially the
You could
transportation.
simulate almost anything and everything. And yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect. So, Venkat, we've come to a section which we're going to call the Dilse Questionnaire. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you can give a super short answer, and we can move on to the next question. If you'd like to elaborate, feel free. So, you already, I mean, I think I know the answer to the first question. I'm going to ask you, who's your role model or your inspiration? I think you're going to say somebody from your IIT days, but if it's not, that's okay. But any inspiration you have in your career, Venkat?
Yeah, I think one of the great inspirations that I actually had, of course, Professor Sikdar has always been my mentor, and he has guided me all through, and he continues to guide me. So, from a professional point of view, I actually take Mr. Sridharan as a role model in terms of as a karma yogi, what we call him, and the kind of contributions that he has become a metro man, having a single-minded focus of actually solving the uh, problem in terms of and making sure building an institution which actually lasts longer and beyond an individual and beyond a uh, time, right? So I think that's where I admire him, and
Perfect.
he's professionally he's my role model. I always looked upon to his life to draw some lessons for myself.
That is great. So the next one is any favorite book or a documentary that you have that you keep going back to for
Yes, yes. Of
inspiration?
course, uh, I again here I have 2 points. I always been reading Bhagavad Gita from my childhood days, right from my and I more than it, I don't see it as a religious book, but as a as a text which has always inspired me. Every time I read something, and it actually contextualizes and gives me a solution. While I see this as a book that I can actually go back all the times. On a contemporary end, I happen to read the book called The Professional by Subrato Bakshi, and I really admire that book and I enjoy that book, and that's one book that I'm not go- and I gift that to as many of them, both to my customers and to my team members all the times. And that's been one of the wonderful books that I've read and have candidly expressed a lot of those dilemmas that a professional would actually come across in his or her careers, and then provide some best guidance.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
and I have actually
I've
come
not
across
read
that.
that book myself, so
So,
I will look into
yeah,
it.
probably I would gift it to you so
Yeah,
we
when we see
connect.
next.
Yes, yes.
So, on the same lines as the first two, I mean, what's the, I mean, say, I would say you obviously get advice, but I mean, if there's somebody day one in their careers or year one in their careers, Venkat, irrespective of which career they are in, what is one piece of advice you would give them?
I think one of the things that I keep telling the youth and young whenever I go to colleges and other places is actually to be staying socially relevant. So in whichever the domain that you are, I think what is important is to actually stay socially relevant, because that's what is going to stay forever. I think
Hmm.
whether you are solving a community problem or a transportation problem or a climate problem or whatsoever, I think as long as you are actually solving and staying relevant socially, and trying to solve the problem of a community, so that's where I think we will have a long way to go, and we will be sustainable for a longer period of time, and that would actually help you to uh, build a career for oneself. I think that's
Beautifully
that's a
said.
simple piece of advice that I would like to give.
Yeah, beautifully said, Venkat. And in your career, I mean, you've obviously achieved a lot of things already. There's many more great things ahead of you, Venkat. But I mean, what's if you were to point out one thing that you're super proud of in your career, anything that comes to mind?
So, as I told you, so one of the I think there are many to that point, and I have always relished a lot of these good things that we were actually doing. Uh, Primarily, when we actually started exploring RFID technology per se for uh, solving the bus tolling problem. So that actually I felt one of the biggest breakthroughs that we actually had to actually how to leverage technology. And same way, I think I would also want to add the current Astram project that we were actually delivering to Bangalore Traffic Police, actionable intelligence for sustainable traffic management. I think that is one of the things that I feel I will be very. If you ask me this question after 5 years, I would actually say like
You're
Astram is
basically
one of the
projecting it for
breakthroughs.
the future. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, Astram is one of the breakthroughs that I would be
I
relishing it.
Yeah,
So
I could see that myself too, because
uh,
I mean that is such a complex project. I mean, the
yes, yes, yes.
amount of
And
scale and
solving a complex problem like a traffic congestion problem in a city like Bangalore,
yeah,
uh, I always tell that I don't think we will be able to solve uh, with a click or but it's only through a strong collaboration and everybody's involvement and engagement is
yeah,
what is very important, and that's one of the reason why we are also trying to see how to engage community into this initiative, and want to make this from a we have transitioned that slowly from a project to a program, now from program to a mission. So
yeah,
that's how we are actually looking. Astram should become a mission. Leave apart the name, whatever that name is, I think a strategic weapon that we were trying to create
yeah.
for uh, for us to solve the problem in the hands of empowering the traffic police. So
So thanks, Venkat. I mean, I must say, every time I come to Bangalore and stop at a traffic signal, and I look at the signal and wait there, I always think of you. Thinking that you're doing something to play a big role via Arcadis and work with the Bangalore traffic police to complex all those solve problems with AI and all the new technology that you're bringing in. So I learned a ton today, Venkat. I'm going to look up the book and your inspiration and all of that. So it's a great learning for me to learn more about you and your journey. So thanks so much for taking the time today, Venkat. I'm sure we'll meet up in person soon, but for my audience here, thank you for taking the time, man.
Thanks a lot, Anthony. And then it was pleasure talking to you. I think you've made me to time travel back, and having some pleasant memories from my life. So thanks for that time. And then I hope you got what you wanted from the
Yeah,
conversation.
absolutely.
I hope your
This
audience
is what this
also.
podcast is all about. Learning from people
Yes.
like you and try to replicate some of your learning. So thanks so much, Venkat. Take care.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.